Hello everyone and welcome back to a fresh episode on Front Row on Economy.lk. In conversation, I have with me Bingumal Thewarathanthri, who is the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank Sri Lanka. Hi Bingumal and welcome to Front Row.
Hello, Shiran. Thanks for having me.
Bingumal, right now I think what we're talking a lot about is the COVID impact as expected. But as a bank, foreign bank, in particular in Sri Lanka, how has the journey been in the last 6 to 8 months in particular, where the government is looking to support a lot of the businesses, provide a lot of mechanisms to help them recover as well? How has it been, and the interaction with the private sector that Standard Chartered has to deal with?
Yeah, Shiran. So one thing is, this is a 1 in 100 years event. So this is not the year to look at ROTs and profitability. It was all around, all about looking after your clients. So government also came up with a moratorium guideline. So first thing we did was we line up clients for the moratorium. So that was given immediately. I think most of those clients have paid us now by end of October. Tourism sector going into next year. But what we also did was globally we came up with this COVID fund, $1 billion COVID fund for the clients who are manufacturing something to battle COVID.
Right.
If you're changing your manufacturing plant from a particular type of manufacturing into something like PPEs, or you're already in pharma sector and doing something more for the to battle COVID, I mean, we looked at those sectors and we financed series of clients in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was one of the first countries to actually access that $1 billion fund. We did about $45 million so far, more to do. So that was a good experience for us in Sri Lanka. Then the third piece was we felt that especially on the export sector, some of the factoring companies started cutting down limits and cancelling limits for the Sri Lankan exporters as well as for the country. So some of those exposures we had to take it on balance sheet on our side and help the exporters. And also some of the clients had like large working capital facilities planned for large volumes. Now those volumes didn't happen. So then turning those facilities into term funding was also something that we did for some of the clients. So all in all, I think it has been a fantastic journey. Every day was a new day, but we done reasonably well, and I think we landed safely.
So one thing we've seen with the pandemic is also the need to digitalize more and at a much quicker pace, both at a country level and also at industry level. In that context, what do you think are some of the low-hanging fruits for Sri Lanka at a national level and for the private sector, in particular the financial sector, which is been a key driver of a lot of the other countries' digitization?
Yeah, Shiran, I'll start the private sector first because the companies went through a very difficult time with the lockdown, because people had to work from home, and not all these people would work from Colombo. So the people were working from all over the countryside, and there were data issues and all of that. Having said that, most of these clients started to transact digitally on electronic banking platforms. I think the first thing they should identify is like not having a digital payment platform. They should basically look at that as one of their top risk items in the risk registry. So we've seen that happening in most of the companies. If you're today, doing only payments, you should also get into things like digital trade, opening LCs online. So that's a new trend for Sri Lanka. We've seen slowly things are picking up. I think that's a big change. Then the reconciliation piece, get a file from the bank and do an auto reconciliation. So you can actually run the entire company from home if you do that. A long way to do on the trade side, but on the cash side, I think we have made significant progress. On the government side, I think there are great plans to come up with a national ID, the automating the whole tax collection process, SLPA, going into digital platform, customs, often digital payments, all of that. So I think the fundamental thing is the digital ID, but only by creating a digital ID we will not reach the end destination. I think it's very important that you create the ecosystem around the digital ID. For an example, if you change your address, what will happen? So there should be like different platforms connecting with the NIC department and feeding that information into NIC department. Ideally, you can do it through a blockchain solution. I think that's what's been proposed by central bank. And then a common KYC. Ideally a common KYC. So if I do a KYC for you, I make sure that I do everything proper so another bank can copy that. So the digital KYC, the digital ID, digital KYC and real-time onboarding is a big game changer for Sri Lanka.
From switching gears from digitization to another interesting topic, which is sustainable financing. I know this is some subject probably we can have even beyond this time frame for this interview. But it's sort of being highlighted right now as well, and even pre-COVID as well. And its overall role in Sri Lanka meeting some of the key SDGs, which have been put in place as well. What's the role the financial sector can play, is playing, and really can play?
Yeah, so UN came with these SDGs in 2015, I believe. So as a bank, we had an ESG group from 1997, going back to 1990s. So since the SDGs were launched, I think in 2015, 17 SDGs, we also came up with a policy framework and how we want to approach it. As an industry, every bank got some kind of a framework around it. We are slowly looking at green structures, green moving clients from brown to green. But the three things should happen. The first thing is the being a catalyst, then standardize. The third piece is democratize. So when I say a catalyst, I think banks should take the first step forward and look at clients who are into industries, who are into brown industries, and how to move them into green industries. Something that we should take the lead and do. In terms of standardization, the most important piece is the MIS. Today, the reporting is a bit of a difficult one for the banks as well as for the clients. It's a global problem, not a Sri Lankan problem. It's a global problem. We are addressing it as a bank. That's why we got our own policy framework internally for reporting. Then the democratization is all about making sure that you finance the right industries, because by doing green industries or green financing or sustainable financing to green companies in the OECD markets, compared to that, if you do the same thing in India or in Sri Lanka, the impact is much bigger for the planet. So it's very important that look at the important sectors and put your money behind that. Coming down to Sri Lanka, we are very good at looking at the top corporates and saying, okay, let's do this project with you. So it's a green project. Can we also go to the rural areas and see who are the SMEs who are doing some kind of impact to the environment? How can we move them from brown to green is something that we should be looking at. So we did this research called the $50 trillion question. We interviewed 300 funds and we came up with their findings. It was amazing to see 20% of them didn't know about SDGs. Then the other thing was only 13% of them had some kind of a linkage to SDGs. Only 5% of the funds had a green bond. So that shows the level of potential. And the same research would say Sri Lanka has a potential of $16 billion for sustainable financing. So that's mainly into power, water, data connectivity, education, etc. So there's a huge potential for Sri Lankan corporates to get funding from overseas into sustainable financing. And as a bank, we are ready to support them.
Thanks, Bingumal. I think the viewers today went through this conversation, understanding on the financial sector and how banks like Standard Chartered are really supporting the economic recovery. We looked at digitization, some of the low-hanging fruits for the private sector, some things the financial sector can really provide. And then we went to sustainable financing, which really cuts across not only the private sector, the SMEs, and all the value chain within it. So thank you, Bingumal, I think, for that interesting conversation. And while we let you go, we'd like to our viewers to stay tuned to similar interviews like this on Economy.lk.